Some kids get bullied, and they disappear. Others grow up and become powerful. But what if that whole journey isn't really about strength, but about survival? Today we're going to explore the quiet psychology behind the bullied kid who becomes the CEO.
What if the ambition we all admire is really just an echo of a pain that we can't see?
So our story starts with a boy. Let's call him Ethan Cole. And Ethan wasn't weak, he was just thoughtful. You know, he preferred curiosity over competition. But in the social world of middle school, that kind of difference, well, it made him a target.
There wasn't one single big cinematic moment. The trauma was quieter than that, more insidious. It didn't start with a shove or a punch in the hallway.
It started with just a little joke about his clothes, a subtle imitation of the way he walked. It's the kind of cruelty that makes you question your own reality, a humiliation that it sinks in so quietly and stores itself away for later. And this is a really crucial point. Once a group silently agrees that someone is an acceptable target, the cruelty gets a license to escalate. The wound isn't just the insult itself, it's the isolation that comes right after. To survive in an environment like that, Ethan had to adapt. He started developing a set of tools that, later in life, would be mistaken for professional strengths. But they weren't. They were born from a deep need for self-protection.
His first tool was this incredible hyper-awareness. He learned to scan every room, notice every tiny shift in tone, and sense conflict before it even had a chance to materialize. This wasn't a talent, it was a skill that was sharpened by the constant threat of social pain.
This sensitivity, it wasn't a choice for him. It was a defense mechanism. He was building a fortress, not of confidence, but of pure vigilance. So how does this transformation actually happen? Well, it starts with that social pain, which creates this desperate need for control. See, when you can't control how people treat you, you find something you can control. For Ethan, that thing became achievement. It provided a refuge, and pretty soon, his entire sense of self, his whole identity, was built on his ability to perform.
And this became his core unspoken belief. It wasn't about a love for success, it was about escaping that feeling of powerlessness, ambition. It became a form of self-defense.
And on the outside, it worked. I mean, it really worked. The quiet, thoughtful kid kind of disappeared, and he was replaced by this competent, respected, and incredibly successful leader. But inside, the story was very, very different.
His outward success became this perfect mirror image of his internal reality. That CEO title, it was masking a quiet emptiness. The applause from investors, it couldn't bridge the emotional distance he'd maintained for years. And the leader that everyone looked up to and respected was, in private, deeply, deeply lonely.
This was the question that haunted him on the day he became CEO. In the exact moment that was supposed to be his ultimate victory, all he felt was this quiet distance from it all. That feeling of enough. It just never showed up. And that right there is the core of the problem. The promotion, the title, the money, all of it could change his circumstances, but it couldn't reach back in time until that 12-year-old boy in the hallway that he was safe.
So this brings us to the huge difference between surviving a wound and actually healing it. Ethan had absolutely mastered survival, but healing, that required a completely different set of tools.
So why is that? Why can't you just achieve your way out of trauma? Well, because the trauma isn't about a lack of success, it's about a lack of safety. And the strategies that create success are often born from the very beliefs that keep us from ever feeling safe.
Silently, in the background of his life, a set of operating principles were always running. Don't be too visible, keep earning your place or you're going to be rejected, and the most important one, never, ever rely on anyone else for your emotional safety. These beliefs, they make you a great worker, but they also keep you completely isolated.
The turning point for him wasn't some big business deal. It was a small, quiet moment. A junior employee thanked him, not for being brilliant or efficient, but for making her feel safe after she'd made a mistake. And that one word, safe, it just cracked through years and years of armor.
This insight from a therapist reframed his entire life. His success wasn't a fluke, it was a direct result of his adaptation to pain. But he had been confusing the goal of survival, which is all about control and protection, with the goal of healing, which is about connection and acceptance.
This realization, it started a whole new journey for him, one that wasn't about climbing higher, but about integrating the past with the present, to find a different, much quieter kind of victory. Years later, he visited his old school, and he finally understood. The sensitivity that made him a target, it was the exact same sensitivity that became empathy. That hyper-awareness that came from fear was the same awareness that allowed him to be such a perceptive leader. It was never a flaw. It was his source.
His success was never about getting back at the kids in the hallway. It was never about proving them wrong.
It was about transforming the wound itself into a source of understanding. It was about using his own experience of feeling unsafe to create environments where other people could feel safe.
Sometimes, the bullied kid becomes the CEO, not because he wanted power, but because he wanted to never feel powerless again. And real healing doesn't happen when the world respects you. It happens when you finally realize the kid in that hallway was never weak. He was surviving.